the bottom of your screen, you're going to see that there are several icons. The first button on the left is chat that a lot of you are already using. When you use the chat, be sure to choose that your messages are sent to all panelists and attendees, and that way the entire group can read your message. If you send it to just the panelists, only Rob and Staci can see it. So on the right, you'll see the Q&A button. Please use this to ask the presenters questions. We'll do our best to answer all the questions as they come in, make sure that you get the answers that you need, and we'll have dedicated time at the end of the session to go over whatever we aren't able to get to in the chat and in the Q&A. You will receive a certificate for this webinar. I know this question always comes up. Please expect that in your email that you registered with within 5 to 10 business days. And without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers. So here are the authors of the Standout series, Rob Jenkins and Staci Johnson. Rob Jenkins is a popular presenter and author of English as Second Language Topics. He is a retired faculty member from Santa Ana College School of Continuing Education, where he taught ESL for 27 years and served as faculty development coordinator for 28 of those. Staci Johnson is also a popular presenter who has taught all types of ESL, including credit and non-credit college and workplace English. She holds an MA in linguistics with a teaching ESL certificate. Rob and Staci received the 2013 Heinle Outstanding Achievement Award from National Geographic Learning for their textbook series Standout. Standout is currently in its 3rd edition, and I think a lot of you know and love it already. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob and Staci, who are going to tell us all about teaching lower levels in the virtual environment. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see everybody. Rob and I are out in Southern California. We were talking a little bit earlier how warm it is here today. I don't know how warm it is where you are, but I'm so happy that you guys could join us today. We're going to kind of jump right into it because we don't have a lot of time and we want to make sure we can explain everything clearly and also answer your questions. So you can see our agenda up on the screen. We're going to start off talking about teaching basics. Then we're going to move into synchronous instruction. And finally, we're going to wrap up with some other considerations, technology, asynchronous work. We're going to spend most of our time on number 2, the synchronous instruction, where we're going to cover 3 highly effective and versatile tools that will help make your instruction more student-centered. So we're going to start off with the teaching basics. So before we start talking about low-level teaching in a virtual environment, let's talk about what's unique about teaching students in a low-level class. Can you type your ideas in the chat?
What are some activities or things that you do uniquely in the lower levels?
In a low level that you wouldn't do in a high level? What are some things that you really try to focus on when you're teaching low-level students? Games, more vocabulary usage, repetition, visuals, routine, drilling, clear instructions. They're going so fast I can't read them. I never ask an open-ended question. Routine, I've seen routine a lot. Good, we're going to talk about that later. Confidence to participate, body language.
Visuals. That's a good one. And routine, we've seen a few times. That's really
praise, vocabulary, listening. Okay, great.
You kind of have to be an actor, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're going to put up some of the things that we think about, and you mentioned a lot of these: visuals, repetition, adaptability, multiple short activities, controlled vocabulary, recycling and review. I don't know if anyone said teacher modeling, but that's really important, and a very transparent learning process, which is part of the routine that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about some of these today, but Rob first has some observations about teaching in the virtual environment.
Okay, so when we turned into teaching remotely all of a sudden, it was a great drastic change. As you all know, a lot of us had to jump into a different environment and teach virtually where we hadn't done it before. And I was professional development coordinator and also a teacher. We have at Santa Ana College about 125 ESL teachers part-time, and there was like 5 of us that are full-time. So we were given the charge to help everybody get online. And some of the teachers were very nervous about that. So they got very, very trying to figure out how to do this Zoom thing and how to do all those other things that they had to do. And they were worried about their jobs because they wanted to be able to teach. It was the beginning of the semester and they had to jump in there. So I got call after call and I talked to a lot of people, and it was really good for me because I got to hear from teachers and what they were concerned about. But what happened is that their focus became so focused on, they became so focused on the technology that some of the things that we had been practicing for years and years and we became at our school we became really good at kind of went by the wayside. So I started noticing as I was observing classes and talking to teachers that they were so worried about getting this 30 minutes to an hour in a Zoom that they or just contacting the students, that they were not really paying attention to the solid objectives. By the end of class, our students will be able to do this. They were not necessarily talking so much about lesson planning. They weren't really going and scaffolding things from what students know to what they don't know and helping them to be able to progress. Those kind of things, that routine that we talked about earlier, started getting lost in the shuffle. Students, it wasn't transparent because they didn't have objectives. There was not the same routine. Maybe they developed a routine, which was fine, but they were forgetting some of the things about lesson planning. So I just want to stress as we do these things and as we talk about these things that we really strive to do what we know works. These best practices are so important. They didn't have as much interaction. They got nervous about using, in Zoom, for example, they got nervous about using breakout rooms. And there weren't near as many tasks. The teachers were talking a lot more. So think about that in yourself and ask yourself, am I talking or is there interaction with the students? Is there a community that we're building with our students? And learner-centered instruction. When you're in front of a class, you learn a lot about the students. When they're in doing something, you can stop and talk to a student. You can ask a lot of questions and get information. All of that stuff that we do so that we can better meet the specific needs of every single student, we were losing. And so we really had to reevaluate what we were doing in the classroom. So I just want to stress that is really important, that we think about these different types of things, all levels, but especially low level. They need that extra support. They need that routine. They need that interaction so that they gain confidence. They need learner-centered, so you know what they need more, because as you know, every student is different. And so we need to treat them a little differently. So we have to give them private time. It's a lot harder online to do that. Students don't necessarily, usually when you're teaching, you say, okay, here I am in the class and I can see they're not quite getting it because students are not focused, or because I can see students with this curious look on their face, like, what are you saying? And all those things. And we don't see as much of that in the online environment. And so what happens is we may teach something and not spend as much time as we ordinarily would because we are not responding to student feedback. So we need to have student feedback, especially again in the low levels. We need to have that feedback. We need to know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, what's going on with them. So these are the kind of things that I hope that you start thinking about as we move forward on this. And I mentioned it already, a strong community of learners. The more the students are working together, the more that they feel this community, the more they have support from one another. So it's not just you trying to hold up this great heavy classroom. It's the class helping one another. They become part of a community, and that's really what we need to build. And if we're not doing that in our virtual environment, we are not doing what we need to do to help especially the low levels to succeed.
So when I look at that list, I think it's so overwhelming. I mean, how am I supposed to do all this stuff and teach on Zoom? So what I think we need to go back to is that routine. What did we used to do before we were teaching online? What were we focused on before? And one of the most basic things is lesson planning. Rob and I come from a background of always using a really strong, basic lesson plan format. If you look here on the slide, you can see these are the steps to the lesson plan format. We thought it might be fun to have you guys put them in order. So if you don't want to type all of them out, go ahead in the chat box and just type the first letter of each of the steps of the lesson plan in the correct order. I'm going to give you a hint. The first one is W.
Ha ha ha.
Someone got it.
Afaf knows the acronym already. So, it's looking good.
Okay, good. Steven's an overachiever, clearly. Okay, I see a little bit of discrepancy in the last two letters. I see some A and E switched around. So let's just talk about it real quick. Thanks for playing along. The actual order of the lesson plan format is warm up and review, introduction, presentation, practice, evaluation, and application. And a lot of people switch the E and the A because you assume that the evaluation is always the last thing that you're going to do when you're teaching a lesson plan format. But we like to make sure the application is the end all be all. They're going to prove that they learned the objective by doing the application. So we really like to evaluate the students before we have them go on and do the application to make sure they're going to be successful. Because if they're not successful, then you're going to have trouble building their confidence. So we really like to have that evaluation before the A. But as you can see on the side, we are evaluating all the time. Now, this is a lot harder to do online because normally when you're looking at your 20 to 30 faces, you can see them nodding, or you can see the blank stares, or you can actually ask for some sort of a verbal, do you understand? But it's a lot harder to do online. So this is something that we're going to talk about today in the activities that we're going to show you, where you can really make sure that you're evaluating the students to make sure that they understand what's going on.
Let me say just a couple things. One of the things is that you as a teacher need to have your camera on. So if you just have the letter of your name or a picture of you, it's not the same as having you on. Then if you can encourage your students, usually it appears that maybe 50% of our students really don't want to be seen. And you don't want to force anybody to do it, but if you can encourage them to show their faces so you can get a little bit better clue, especially at the low levels, you get a better clue of what they're thinking, and you have that extra connection. Now, this lesson plan format, there's a lot of different lesson plans formats. This is one from Madeline Hunter from many years ago that we latched onto in our books. In fact, we have a lesson planner that goes through all these steps every time. We wrote the lesson plans before we wrote the book, and that's what this lesson plan is about. Of course, there's other ways you can do it, but this is what we would recommend. And if you're using Standout, this is what you would do.
Let me just jump in real quick and say something. I've got a high schooler and I have some younger children as well. And in the high school, it was a really big deal that the students didn't want to be on camera. And we realized that 2/3 of the population in our area is on free and reduced lunch. So we realized that a lot of the students were embarrassed of their background and they didn't want to show that on camera. And some of the teachers were so brilliant. And in the very beginning of the semester, they showed the students how to put up a virtual background, or now you can blur your screen. And if you think that's an issue with your students, it might be something to think about, because it'd be so incredible if you could see all of their faces, not just in the breakout rooms, but when you're teaching all of them, to kind of get a sense if they're understanding.
Yeah, and again, that is really, really important if you can do it. Always being aware of the students' needs is essential.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the part of the presentation that I said in the beginning is going to be where we spend the chunk of our time. So we're going to talk about synchronous activities that you can do with your students in the classroom. So you can see on the screen, you can do polls and surveys, classroom discussions, student feedback, quizzes, and community building activities. And you're probably thinking, well, how do I do these? A lot of these are difficult to do on Zoom, and that's what we're going to show you today. So we're going to talk about Google Forms. We're going to talk about breakout rooms in Zoom, and we're going to talk about Padlet. And maybe some of you, I assume you've heard of Google Forms and breakout rooms, but maybe some of you haven't heard about Padlet. So we'll talk about that. So if you're doing Google Forms, you can do, this is where you can do your surveys. This is where you can do your polls, assessment, and get student feedback. And we're actually going to do an example of that with you guys today, if we have enough time. To do a Google form, you do need to have a Google or a Gmail account, which I'm assuming most people do, but if not, it's free to sign up for one. And if you have one, you already have a Google Drive. You do need a Google Drive to do these forms, but it's part of your Gmail account. Your students do not need to have Gmail in order to participate in these activities. It'll be something where you create a link and you share the link with them, and they can click on the link while they're in the classroom and fill out the form without having a Google account. So today we're going to show you some examples of that. Breakout rooms. Hopefully you're using breakout rooms in Zoom, but Rob's going to talk a little bit more about them later. But breakout rooms are great for discussions. Make sure students can share their screens. We'll talk about that. Critical thinking activities, reporting what they've learned or reporting what they know. And it's a great way for you to monitor their progress, because you can jump in and you can see a smaller group and see what's happening. Padlet has an abundance of applications that can help you and your students communicate and build community in your classroom. So you can do corkboard messages, you can do timelines, you can do maps, you can do flow charts. And if we click on the next slide, you can see some examples of these.
So yeah, so here are a few examples. These are the examples. These are the things you can do. So Padlet is really robust in the things that you can do. You can just create a wall. We're going to show you an example of that in just a little bit, but you can just create a wall. So students respond. You give them a link. They click on the link in the chat. They go right there. They can write a sentence. They can upload video. They can upload pictures or music. There's all sorts of things they can do, but usually just words is enough. So you're asking a question instead of having them all trying to speak. That's another problem that we have in Zoom at the lower levels. First of all, people are nervous to speak, but because there's one or two, and you all know this, there's one or two students that really are fast on the draw. And so they're going to do everything first. But if you give them time and they can see some examples from those students, that's better. So we give them time to respond. There's some research that shows that we often as teachers respond because we aren't patient enough to wait for our students, and we often respond within a couple seconds. We want the students to respond, so we teach them this with all of these different things. Now, let me just say this. Some of you may be concerned, well, how are my low-level students going to be able to do this technology? You do it with them first. You work on it. Unit after unit, lesson after lesson, just a little bit at a time. You do it with them together first. And then after you've done it with them together, you slowly release them to do it. And it's a great opportunity. So you have the wall, you have the ones I like is a wall. I love the map. On the map, you can pinpoint, like, for example, the best restaurants in the neighborhood, or, that they do research on. You put the address in, it finds it on the map, it puts a little pin on there, and then you roll over it with your mouse and it says things. So you share this after they've done this, you share that with the class, or while they're doing it, you share it with the class, and you can see these things happening. Timelines in Standout, we have timelines, especially when in the occupation area where we're saying, what's your plans for the future? And so we have a timeline. Oh, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to after that, I'm going to go into this type of program. I'm going to do some part-time work in this area to get experience, or whatever it is. You can put that in a timeline, and each student can do a timeline for themselves, or you can have them do it in groups. So those are really good.
Rob?
Yeah.
Do the students have to have another device while using Padlet, or do they do it right in Zoom with you?
Well, there's a couple ways that you can do it. They can have another device. They can do it on their phones if they're on a computer. There's a few things that you can do. They can share the screen. If they're on a computer, again, they can share the screen with Padlet. That is the biggest challenge. Or you can just give them a moment. They can leave Zoom, so they're not looking at Zoom, so as you guys all know, when you're using Zoom, you can go to another application. Nobody can see what you're doing. Hopefully none of you are doing emails while you're teaching your students, but they can't see that unless you've shared it. So they can use they can be in the same place on the same device doing those things. They don't have to have a second device to do it. They just can't necessarily see your face while they're doing it.
Okay, and one of the attendees is saying that, I'm assuming she's had the problem where students click out of Zoom to do something and then they can't find their way back into Zoom.
Okay, so yeah, this comes later at the end under other considerations, but let me just answer that question so you're not, in case we don't get to it. If you're on a PC, you try Alt Tab. Teach them how to do Alt Tab. So you hold down the Alt key and click on Tab. If you're on a Mac, it's a little different. I think it's a Command Tab is what it is on a Mac. So you can click from one application to another on your screen, Alt Tab. So it works out really well because all you do is you hold down Alt and you click on Tab until you find the one you want, and then you let go, and then you're back on your screen. The other way to do it is not to use your Zoom in full screen mode. As long as you're not in full screen mode, it's easier to get from one place to another.
So these are things that would be great to work on with your students in the very beginning of your semester, if it's something you're going to be using and doing a lot.
Yeah, let me say one thing real quick, and we're going to say it again too, but I just worry about you getting the message, and that is there are thousands of videos, YouTube videos that are 15 minutes long that help you to do this. I have never seen the Alt Tab one, but there's a lot of things that you can go to and get information. We'll give you a couple suggestions at the end here. So let me just talk to you about Standout and the pages in Standout real quickly. This is a lesson in book 2, and you can see the low level. This isn't super low level. This is beginning high. But in book 2 is beginning high. We have basic, which is super low. And then we have book 1, which is beginning low, and book 2, which is beginning high. But you can see that we are incorporating some of those things. There's some visuals and other things you'll see on the next page. There's some visuals. And we come down to a point where this is our lesson plan. So this part you're doing, the top part, A and B, you're doing with the students and you're working through it. And then they're going to practice. So remember, presentation, practice. So this is where they would practice. In Standout, there's 3 pages for every lesson, and each page is, there's 3 pages, and in the lower levels, there's presentation practice on each page. Okay, so in Classify, write nutrition foods for each category. They could write this out, but you can't see them doing it. So what can we do? How can we do that? All right. Then we have critical thinking. In Standout, we often mark the critical thinking with a bold red, so you can see here the students, after you've worked with the students and you work on this vocabulary and you build the vocabulary, the students will be able to, in a group, so they get into a group and then they're going to rank who has the best nutrition. This is open-ended. That means students can't be wrong, which is a great thing. They can't be wrong, so they have a lot of different choices. But you have them working on that. And so I'm wondering if you're thinking right now, well, how would I do that on a virtual? Well, we're going to show you how we would do this. And then we have a presentation and practice. Here's another practice. The presentation is embedded in this, and then they do this practice, and then they have the application. And this application, they're basically just writing what kind of foods they eat. Wouldn't it be nice if all the students could see what everybody else eats? Because that would be a discussion you'd have in class. We always stress that you do the application in class. You can always send them home, and we want them to. We've learned through Zoom that the students are capable of doing homework. A lot of you have had your students doing homework because Zoom time is limited. And before Zoom, a lot of teachers just never did homework because, oh, my students aren't going to do it. But we can get them to do it. And when I was in class, I had my students doing it all the time. Homework is important. So that's the kind of thing that you can do. And so you can do an application outside of class, but do one in class to make sure all the students are showing what they've learned that day. It's part of assessment and all sorts of other things. So that's what that's about. So what are we going to do with this lesson? So this is one lesson, 3 presentations and practices. So we've got warm up, introduction, presentation, practice, evaluation, application. We have presentation, practice. This is warm up, introduction, practice, or presentation, practice. This is presentation, practice. This is presentation, practice, and then application, and with evaluation always built in. And the lesson planner tells you how to do all of that. So this is important for low level. We have to do a lot of repetition, and we put everything in a very good, strong context. That's going to help your low level students. We want them to be thinking about things practical to their lives, relevant to them. And in competency-based education, that usually is your home life and all of that, but it's also work and academic, especially if they're moving forward. So we give them opportunities to do all those different things. All right. So here's our first example. In the first one, we've started out, we read about nutrition, we break this down, we listen to this. And a lot of times what I like to do is cover this and have them listen first. So you wouldn't show them this. Oh, by the way, there is a classroom presentation tool with Standout. So you have all of these pages on, you can use them and you can click and the audio goes for you and everything else. So you have all of that. You start talking about My Plate. And then as you're going with My Plate, you run into the classified, right? Nutritious foods for each category. All right. So we would give them a link. We're not going to have you do this one, but we would give them a link. So let me just click on this. See if this is going to work. Tell me, Stacy, if you can. Oh, wasn't that funny? I haven't had that happen before. Okay. All right. So can you see my Google?
Yep.
Stacy? Okay. So here is something that I just put together. And honestly, for this workshop, I put this together in 5 minutes. So it's not something difficult, and yet it's so useful. This is just a Google form. Very, very easy to create. And the students can go in on the spot. You can get student feedback. We want to know what students know. I can control the vocabulary. So I'm giving them just the words that I feel comfortable that they know. And I want them to put these, and I may add 1 or 2 words that they don't know and that they're going to have to research, but I'm not going to overdo it. So in Standout, we build on vocabulary. So this is the 4th lesson of the unit. So we started out with just a few words, and then we keep adding to those words. So in this case, I'm going to choose apples. This is fruits, right? So I'm going to choose apples. Believe it or not, tomatoes. You can have a discussion about that with your students. Avocados, same thing. You can have a discussion about that. Vegetables, I'm going to say my not favorite, broccoli. And potatoes, which is really a tuber. And then that's all I'm going to put there. Dairy, I'm going to pick milk. Eggs is not dairy. It's in the dairy section of the supermarket, but it's not one of those. Butter. I'm not sure I'm getting them all, but I'm going kind of fast so we can see it. All right. So I'm going to pick a few more things. And as you can see, I'm just going to have this response real quickly so you can see it. This is grains. So we're going to say bread and wheat. I forgot nuts and protein. Is that protein? Yeah. All right. So here we go. Submit. Oh, I forgot to put my name. That's my name today. And I say submit. And it's done. Now you, as a teacher, will be able to see graphs and charts of this. All right. So I'm going to close this and come back here. And I'm going to show you in a minute these graphs and charts that you can see. But there's graphs and charts. You share that with the class. So they do you could use Quizlet to do this. You could use quizzes to do this. There's different things you can do, but Google Forms is so easy. You teach them 1 application that they can do lots of things with, and it really helps out a lot. So here's the second activity. Second activity is going to require them to get into groups. So we need to do a Zoom breakout room. And you send them in a Zoom breakout room, and then they can discuss it. One of the problems that I had when I first started this, and I couldn't figure out, well, once they go in the room, they can't see what I've got displayed. And if they don't have the book in front of them, I'm hoping they have the book in front of them, but if they don't have the book in front of them, how can they take this information that I've been displaying into their classroom? All right. Into their breakout room. So they're going to do this. And again, you build them up for it. You get them started. You model all of this. That's what's important about low level. You got to model this and say, so you start out by saying, Sylvia, what does Sylvia have for breakfast? And one of the students will respond, cereal and milk. What does Augustine have for breakfast? He has coffee. Okay, who has the better nutrition for breakfast, Sylvia or Augustine? And most people will say Sylvia, and then you'll say why if it's appropriate for your level. And then you'll ask some questions. And so you'll spend quite a bit of time on this page before you actually have them rank. And then eventually they're going to rank. But what you need to do to make sure they can take it with them is in your Zoom, assuming you're using Zoom. If you're not, there's similar actions in other applications too. You want to make sure that multiple participants can share simultaneously. So there's a button right where it says share screen, where you click on and you say multiple participants can share simultaneously. So then they can share their screen in their groups. Okay. So that's the idea there. Finally, Padlet. So in Padlet, well, in this part of the lesson, we want to share our own experience, our own lives, something about us. Padlet is ideal for that because in this area, we can really make something happen and students can share a great deal. I want to show you this. It just says, what do you and your family eat for breakfast? Sometimes the application stage is very, very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated, especially for low levels, just very simple. But the fact that they are putting in personal information makes it ideal for them because they are breaking free from your direction and being able to do their own thing. So that's where we get going with that. So here is my example. Again, I put this together really quickly, but here's my example of that exercise. And I didn't do breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I just didn't. You could do all of them. You can do one of them and have the rest done for homework. All sorts of things you can do. But you can take a picture. You can see here I am. I just took a picture of myself using the camera. You can just write. So here people just did some writing. You can do a picture from the internet. So you can upload a picture, or you can even do a video. So this is a video. I play it, but well, let me just play a little. You weren't gonna, oh, I forgot I can't play it. What am I thinking? All right. Where am I? All right. So this is, I can't play this because this isn't really Padlet. This is on my PowerPoint, but you get the idea. You can play this and it's talking about pho, which is Vietnamese food and a recipe. So this student, Lien, figured, hey, you know what? I want to make sure that people can really see what, understand what pho is and how tasty it is. And it opens up conversation. Then you share this Padlet with your students on Zoom, and you get a rich discussion even at the lower levels. So I hope that that made sense to you, that we're getting a lot out of these pages. And you don't have to do these three applications, Google Forms and Padlet. And I would do breakout rooms just about every day, but you don't have to do these other two every day. Work them up to it, prepare them for it, help them to do it. There's also, I think I see somebody mentioning a whiteboard. I much prefer to use Google Docs as a whiteboard than the Zoom whiteboard. It's just so much better. The Google Docs and Google Sheets, and you also have Google Slides. All of those things are easier to use than the one on Zoom. So yes, I think that's a great idea, Hugh. So thank you for mentioning that. That's pretty good that I noticed that at the moment. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a Google form. This time it's a survey. So imagine this is, we're trying to find out about the students. This is another lesson. It's in the middle of the lesson. So this is page 2 of a lesson. And we're talking about healthy eating, and we have some suggestions here, 8 suggestions. We go over it with the students, we repeat it, we talk about it, we maybe share something from the internet, so we have visuals. We do all that we can to help them prepare for this, and then we give them a survey. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this survey.
Yep. Hold on. Everyone ignore the one I just put in. It was missing some letters. So I'm going to put in the survey now. It's the longer one.
Yeah. And we'd like you to take this survey if you don't mind. And
click on that link.
And I'll pull up the results. All right. So if you'll do that, let me pull up I'm going to pull up the results on another place here so that we have it. I guess I'm showing my whole life history there. Okay. I did it again. All right. All right. So are you doing it? I hope that you're doing it. Let us know how you're doing. And I am going to go to my Google Drive and pick this up so I can show you the results. And like a great prepared person I am, I have to find it real quick, but I'm going to find it. Maybe I won't. All right. There's 2 links to the survey. One of those links is the actual sample and the other one is where you actually fill it in. So I'm going to go ahead and go here. I'm going to click on this, do it this way. All right. And so this is, for those of you that aren't doing the survey, let me just share it with you. So here's the survey. It's very basic. I just took the first 3 lines. How often do you keep raw vegetables in the refrigerator to eat as a snack? How often do you eat a variety of foods? How often do you drink beverages with a lot of sugar and all of that? So what you want to do with this is you will go to the page where you created it and you'll get something like this. Again, so we're saying in this case, out of 10 people, and this isn't you guys, but out of 10 people, we had two that how often do you keep raw vegetables in the refrigerator? Always, sometimes, or never. Always, sometimes, or never. And you get kind of a feel for what that is all about. Does that make sense? I hope. So these are our responses. Every time I click, I get to the other thing because I'm doing PowerPoint.
Rob, right. I just want to jump in real quick. I know there's no real good answer for this, but people are complaining that who has time to create all these forms and do all this stuff for your class?
Well, the best answer is these forms are easy. They're fast. This took, honestly, and I'm not exaggerating, this took 5 minutes. I see we have a little bit of time. So I'm going to go ahead and create one for you right now. So you can see how fast I can do this. So all I have to do is so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to move over here. Here I am in my Google Drive, and I say, you all can see this, right? Stacy, you can see this?
Yep.
I'm going to click new, and I'm going to say Google Forms. Now, I had a nice little header, and you can create a header if you want, but this is going to be a survey, survey food groups, let's say. And then this is the part, if you want student feedback, individual student feedback, you would put last name, comma, first name, and it already goes to short answer, and then I can start asking my questions. So my first question is, let's do the one I like. Where do you live? Okay, now this is going to give me a pie chart of answers and stuff like that. I can just do that, and I can say, how long have you been in the United States? All right, and you can make these into quizzes too. And honestly, once you get good at this, it doesn't take long at all. So let me just show you what this looks like. I just did 2, but you could do more. Let me just show you. So here the students are. They're gonna put. If I want to keep track of the students, I have the last name first. I live in Buena Park, California. How long have you been in the United States? Okay, so I didn't set this. What did I do wrong here? Okay, let's go back and look and see what I did wrong. See, that's why you want to test it first, but it's pretty easy to use. Let me show you. Okay, how long you live in the United States? I put multiple choice. So we want short answer. And for this one, we want short answer. All right, so that's the idea. Once you get good at it, you can do it. And then you get your responses, and your responses will come out, and you can see the graphs and charts and share it with the students. Honestly, for most things at the low levels, they are fast and easy to do. Let me just show you an example real quick. Let's open this one. Match the word and the synonym or definition. This took probably, this is a long one. I usually don't make them this long. You don't need them this long, but this is for a higher level. This is book 3. And this probably took me max 10 minutes to do. I don't think it took me that long, but it could have taken me that long. I'm trying to be honest with you. All right, so that's the idea.
I just want to say real quick, Rob, everybody, I hope you're looking in the comments, because the chat comments are great. People are giving suggestions on how they do it. They save them, they color code them by book. So go ahead and make sure you're reading through those chat comments, because your fellow colleagues are giving some great idea.
Yeah, thank you so
ideas.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate that. Okay.
Rob, they're also asking, how do you then share that with your students once you create one? Could you show
well,
that?
yeah. So what you do is, I was just sharing it with you, right? So you share the link, and then after you've shared the link, they go in and they do it themselves. Then if you want to share the results, you share the actual main file that you have, that you can see the results of that survey. You can see that. Students also use surveys for projects, and we have projects and Standout in that. Did that answer the question okay, Joy?
So share the link, Rob. You mean I can just copy it and I paste it into the chat and they can all click on it?
That's right. They all click on it and they're in. And then when you want to share the results, you share it just like I just did.
And someone is saying in the chat that you need to add them as collaborators to see the results, but maybe that's in your file.
Yeah, if you want them to have access to your Gmail, you can do that, but you can just share the results directly
by doing a screen share.
By just doing a screen share. Yeah, you don't have to make them collaborators. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so Staci, you want to introduce our final considerations, or is this me? This is you.
I can introduce the final considerations.
Okay.
Final considerations. So we want to remind you that these 3 applications have a lot of benefits to the classroom. It's going to get the students more engaged. It's going to have them working together more. It's going to help you evaluate them better to see if they learned what you were trying to teach, and if you're ready to move on to the application. We encourage you to watch YouTube. It's on there. These 2 people we've found have some great videos on all the things we talked about today. So you can watch more videos, get more ideas, maybe also get the nuts and bolts of it if you're not as familiar with it. And there's just a few more things that we want to mention before we leave.
Okay, so one of those is in virtual teaching, the technology always comes up. You always say, well, can my low-level students do this technology? And I've said it 100 times already, but teach technology throughout the course. Include it in your lesson planning. Say, okay, today I'm going to do a Padlet with the students. I'm not going to ask them to do it. I'm just going to do it myself. And then the next time, maybe you have one student put something in and then have another student put something in on the spot, so that you get kind of the practice in that. Once they get used to it, all they're doing is clicking on a link, and it comes right up, and it just says, and you can do that anonymously or you can do it with their names. So if you don't want to, if you don't want them to share their names at that point, if you want to just get some information, especially feedback about your teaching or whatever, you might want them to answer anonymously. So then you can choose that selection when you set up the Padlet. But again, the Padlet also so easy to use, and for the students just to click and do it, it's great. Do it with them first. I think that projects are really important. We do. Projects are essential part of Standout. We have a project in every unit, and this is a chance you can use Padlet and PowerPoints. I would design within your lesson plans a little continuum of what technology you're going to teach them. It may be just how to use the chat, how to share in a breakout room, just little things like that. Help them out. And so don't expect everything from them the first day, but build towards them. And then anytime you can, share with them what there is to share. This is a little confusing, but I kind of explained it. All right, to move from one application to another on your screen, use Control Tab. But when you get ready to share, this is the share screen, right? You've seen this. So you have a choice. You can click on, let's say, your PowerPoint. You can click on the PowerPoint. But if you click on the very first thing, which is screen, then everything on that screen you can show. In other words, you can flip from one application to another and everybody will see it, like I did today. I didn't stop sharing to share another application. I just kept going. But a lot of teachers, when they first are using Zoom, they don't realize this, so they share a PowerPoint and then they stop sharing, and then they go and share a video, and then they stop sharing and they go and share something else. Just have everything open on your computer at the beginning, and just make sure the PowerPoint's in front, and then everything's there, and you can go from one application to the other without closing down. So that's just a hint. And then finally, we didn't talk about asynchronous instruction. So in asynchronous instruction, what we're talking about here is that homework or a flipped classroom. And what we've done in our classes, what we've done is we've designed it so that our students will do an activity at home first in preparation for the class. So you can use a Google form. That one that you were looking at was an after class activity, the one that I showed you from book 3. And that would be homework. So they could do you could do one activity before class, then you have more time in class to do interaction, and then you have them do another activity after class. So hybrid, I just mean that you could do both flipped classroom and homework, and that's what we do. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We got through that a lot faster than I thought. So we're open for questions, and this is our emails. So
Rob, did you want to mention the learning management system or not? Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes, we do have anybody that uses Standout can, we do have Canvas designed with those ideas, something before class, something after class, already done for you. So you can do that on Canvas, but only people that have the program, that have bought the materials can use it, but it is free. And we also have the online workbook. Online workbook is not a regular student workbook. It is online. It's not the same. We have a student workbook, but it's not the same content. The online workbook has reinforces what you're doing. It has all of those things like grade book and assignments, and you can set up the assignments and hide the assignments, and all the things that you do on other language management or learning management systems you can do on that. It does cost a little bit more money, but it's something that is really useful, already set up for you to do. So those two things are really good. I would suggest that we're getting to a point now where we're realizing our students can do a lot more than we thought. English language proficiency standards say that. It says, hey, don't, well, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but they basically, my feeling is they're saying, hey, your students can do more than you think. So start challenging them. And as you challenge them, and that's one of our philosophies of Stand Out, we don't just try to get students to be successful by doing something they already can do, but we challenge them to do more. And as what they do that, they improve.
Someone in the chat asked if we can do a workshop on Canvas and Stand Out. We already have. And if you look in there, Joy posted a link to that workshop for those of you who are interested.
Right. So there is, yes, there is a webinar on that already. But again, you can email us and ask us questions. We usually get back pretty rapidly if, within a day or two. If it's something we have to really think about or formulate an idea about, it might take us a little bit longer. So don't hesitate to talk to us. We love to talk and chat and find new ideas. We don't consider ourselves the end all of everything. Obviously, we are learning too. So let us know what we can do to help you.
Rob,
All
we
right.
have a question in the Q&A box for both of you guys. Could you define flipped classroom?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sometimes we just say things without doing that. Stacy, you want to explain it or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay, so a flipped classroom means that instead of going into the classroom and doing a presentation and teaching students new things, so we've got warm up, introduction, presentation, practice, evaluation, and application. Instead of doing it in that order, what we do is we prepare them before class. A flipped classroom means that that they're doing things before class. So when they're in class, they're already halfway through the lesson. Basically, they're already getting an opportunity. A lot of people define flipped classrooms as well. They give an example of flipped classrooms. It doesn't have to be this way, as videotaping yourself teaching something and then giving it to the students so they can practice at home and then coming into class. But you just as easily can give them an assignment in the book or a Google form or something from Canvas on Canvas that we've created to do a flipped classroom. Thank you, Melissa. She says my volunteer teachers rave about Standout.
There's one more question in the Q&A. Instead of using Google Forms, could I just pose the question and have students answer in the chat box in Zoom?
Absolutely. And you can, there's a lot of discussion about whether or not you can, that you should record. If you're recording on Zoom, then that is okay. If your students all agree, and that's the hard part. But when you record, you can record the chat too, so you can get student feedback later as well. One of the issues with them just filling out chat, which is fine, is that you can't really monitor everybody participating. And when they're doing a Google form, you have a better chance of more people participating. Some people just don't want to do chat. They just don't want to get on there. So if you have 20 students and you do a chat instead of a Google form, well, it makes it much more difficult. Plus, you don't have those charts and graphs at the end that will show the results of the answers.
Yeah, I think the cool part about using the form as opposed to the chat is the results in those graph forms. And it's something teaching students a different sort of visual literacy and, giving them a chance to see all the results kind of, together.
Oh yeah, you can use Zoom polls too. You don't have to do Google Forms. You can do, Zoom has polls, so you can do that also.
But you could also have them use the chat and then have them create, this might be a little higher level, but have them create their own graphs from the information.
Yeah, and that's always great. That's always great to do. And if you want to teach the technology, you can put them in Excel and have them put in data and have Excel make the chart for them. If that's something you want to do.
Another program or application called Nearpod has come up a bunch in the chat. Rob, I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Nearpod. I've seen it a few times myself. If you go to Google and search and find out about it, watch some videos, I'll certainly do that so that I can answer that. It says, how would you apply Padlet to teaching? Well, Padlet is a great way to get communication with the students so that they're answering questions and they're feeling, you know, they're sharing a part of themselves. That's what Padlet can do. Another thing that Padlet can do is great for projects or something. You say, hey, you know, in a group, you find, you know, talk about your neighborhood and what stores are in your neighborhood or something like that. You could use the map. So there's a lot of ways you can use Padlet. Again, watch those videos. You'll get a lot out of it. Did we do it? I have to look up Nearpod. I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Couple more questions in the chat.
Okay.
In your opinion, what is the most important step to engage lower level students considering the steps of the lesson plan?
Okay, before you even get to the lesson plan, the most important step to getting to know the students and to reaching your students is to get them to trust you. How do you do that? You become part of the community. Don't be separate. Don't be this sage on the stage or this person that's all knowing. Be part of the community. Get them to trust you. And then be honest with them all the time. And they will see that and hear that. In the lesson plan, when you're doing especially not warm up, but introduction and presentation, use personal stories as often as you can. And I realize at low levels that's hard, but you can act it out. You can show pictures of a personal story. You can talk about it. There's a lot of things that you can do to help your students. Use your imagination, but really making that connection is more important than just about anything else. Learn the students' names, know them very well, learn their tendencies and what they know and what they don't know and what they need help in specifically, and then address those things with them and they'll trust you.
All right, we are right at time. So thank you all for attending today. We appreciate your time. And Rob and Staci, we appreciate your time, absolutely, and this wonderful presentation. Everyone here attending and anyone who registered, you will be receiving the recording and a certificate within 5 to 10 business days. Thank you all for being so engaged, asking such insightful questions. Thank you to all of you. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See
Bye,
you guys
guys.
next time.
Bye-bye.